Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
You know, I can picture the look of disappointment and fear in my mother's face today. There's certain things that stay with you forever. And it's not like you can remember them. It's like you can relive them. And that never goes away. Sometimes they can be fantastic memories. Sometimes they can be painful memories. And this is one of the latter. I can remember the look of disappointment and fear on my mother's face, and I can relive all the emotions that I was going through as we had this conversation that was the source of that fear, was the source of that disappointment, was the source of maybe my mom feeling like she had failed. And you know what? The decision I had told her about, in retrospect, as I look back, was probably the right move. But at the time, it wasn't an easy thing to look at my mom and tell her that the life she'd been preparing me for was not a life I was interested in living. You see, my mom's a musician. My mom's a classical cellist. She plays in a symphony in Spokane. And it became pretty clear when I was about 12, 13 years old that music was going to be it for me. That was it. I was going to study music. I was going to be a musician. End of story. And I remember asking my mom once when I'd made that decision. I was still in high school, early high school, but that was what I was going to do. That was all I was interested in doing. Music. It had to be it. And you know what's kind of interesting? Dave Grohl of Nirvana, Foo Fighters, and Dave Grohl fame. Dave Grohl's mom wrote a book. I think it came out around Mother's Day a year or two ago. And it was a book in which Dave Grohl and his mom interviewed other mothers of rock stars. And there was a thread that ran through every single mother's experience. And that was right around the age of 12 or 13, early teenage years. This was the time where it became clear to every single mother that their child was going to be a musician and they better start preparing for it. And it's funny, I remember my mom, who'd chosen the life of a musician, once saying to me, "I never wanted you to be a musician." But it became clear that that's what I was going to do with my life. So she was like, "You're going to do this, you're going to get a plan, and you're going to do it right." And that, to my mom, who was a classical musician, meant a couple things. That meant that I was going to have an education in classical music. That meant I was going to study theory. I was going to study competition. I was going to learn, composition. I was going to learn how to play the piano. I was going to learn how to do arrangements. I was going to learn all the things that you have to learn as a classical musician. And earn a degree in this so I could go teach if I needed to teach, if the whole being a rock star thing didn't work out. I was going to get a proper musical education. And in addition to that, there are all these music schools that I was interested in going to. I was interested in going to the Musicians Institute of Technology in Los Angeles. I was interested in going to Berklee College of Music in Boston. But those were schools that only taught music. And my mom was insistent that I get an education in something else simultaneously. And so I decided I would study journalism. That was what I was going to study. I was going to be a writer, a journalist, or something like that. If the whole being a rock star thing didn't work out, perish the thought. And so my mom stood over me when I was doing my homework, that kid with ADD that couldn't barely get his name written on the paper throughout high school, cracking the whip, making sure I was studying, making sure I was getting good grades, making sure that I would be able to get into a college and go study. She worked hard. She worked hard at getting me through high school. She worked hard at getting me through things like the SATs. And I graduated on the dean's list. No, headmaster. I won a National Merit Scholarship. And I got into the double degree program. So I was going to get a real education and a musical education at the same time. I got into the double degree program at the New England Conservatory of Music and at Tufts University. So my mom felt like she'd done the very best she could to see that her son didn't completely fail at life. I was accepted, scholarship to Tufts and New England Conservatory of Music. And that look of disappointment, that look of fear about my future in her eyes came when I told her, Mom, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to college. I can still remember what it felt like to tell her that. I can relive it. And as much as it struck fear into her, and it was something that you could understand, that fear, turns out it was the right decision.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So you might have gone to college, you might have an education, you might have a degree, you might have all these things. I do not. And that was a source of tremendous fear and perturbation for my mom. You see, my mom had picked up on the fact really early that I was going to make music. That was what I was going to do. When I became a kid that beat on drums incessantly at the age of 4, she was like, this might be going somewhere. My mom's a musician, a professional musician, a cellist that plays in a symphony orchestra up in Spokane in Washington, where she lives. And, well, she spotted this musical inclination and realized that I was about to embark on a difficult journey. The life of a professional musician never has been, never will be an easy one. So she did everything she could to give me every advantage, every chance of succeeding in life, whether it was a musician or not, whether it was as a musician or not, rather. And we went and looked at all these colleges. Man, it was the coolest thing. I was just talking to a buddy of mine about this the other day. It was the coolest thing. I don't think it exists anymore. But at the time, you could get a standby pass. Have you ever done that? At the time, we were living in England, and if you had a return ticket to and from the country, if you're going to prove that you were living there and we're just going to go to America and come back, I don't remember the name of the airline, but there was an airline that did a 30-day and a 60-day standby pass, which meant you could, it was almost like an all-day subway token or something like that. You could go to America and you could fly standby for 30 days, which I did. And it was awesome. I did this in like the 10th grade, I think, the summer between 9th and 10th grade. And my mom got started early. She was like, you're going to be a musician. You're going to get an education. You're going to apply for every scholarship there is. You're going to study classical music. You're going to learn theory. You're going to learn harmony. You're going to learn all the things that you need to learn to get into a real music school so you can go have the best shot at succeeding as a musician. And if you don't succeed as a musician, if you don't become a rock star, well, you're going to have a degree, which means you can go teach, you can go do any number of things with that. My mom once described classical music as the ingredient that worked in everything if you're going to be a musician. She was like, you can fillet it, you can saute it, you can deep fry it, you can air fry it, you can grill it, you can do whatever you want with it. There's one thing that works in every single musical dish, and that's classical music. So you're going to get a real education if you want to be a musician. That is what you're going to do. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Not only that, but you are going to get a real education alongside your musical education, meaning you will have a major, a double major, or you will minor in something else that if you decide that music isn't for you, if the whole, turning into the next Tommy Lee, a Motley Crue thing doesn't work out, then you, my friend, are going to have a degree in something else so that you can do things like eat, pay rent, things of that nature. She was very firm with it. And, in retrospect, I absolutely understand why. So, man, I got this standby pass. And my mom came with me for some of it. Some of it I did by myself. And it's amazing that you could travel that young at that age and do these things. But I flew standby all over America looking at different music schools one summer. That's all I did. Every single school that was supposed to be a music school that I had a snowball's chance of hell in getting into, I visited. And it was the coolest thing, man. Like I said, the standby pass, I don't think they do anything like this anymore, but you could fly on standby for 30 days. So I would go meet a friend for lunch in a different state because I had that standby pass. It was great. And we looked at all these different music schools, and finally I decided that I wanted to go to Tufts and New England Conservatory of Music. They had a double degree program. It was very difficult to get into. So once I made that decision, I had to work my ass off in school. And I am not a focused individual, and I certainly wasn't a focused child or teenager because I had horrible, debilitating ADD and dyslexia. So my mom basically had to stand over me cracking the whip to get me to do my homework. I could barely get my name written on the top of the paper, but she's like, you will succeed academically, you will get into these schools, and you will get scholarships because we can't afford to send you to them without. And I got one of those National Merit Scholarship things because my SAT scores were good enough. And then I practiced really hard at being a drummer. So I got a scholarship to Tufts and New England Conservatory of Music. And much to my mother's chagrin, and it was one of the most difficult experiences in my life, I had to tell her I wasn't going to go. She'd put all these years of effort into trying to set her son, her only son, up for some sort of success. And essentially, I was throwing it all in her face. See, I was in this screaming sort of punk rock band, and we got a record deal after our second show. The drummer was a drummer in one of the biggest bands in England. And, well, because of that, we had record label weasels showing up at our shows and bidding at us from a very early stage in the game. I was like this 16, 17-year-old sort of singer, and my mom was like, you've been playing drums your entire life. How is this possible? I was like, I'm not really singing. I'm just sort of screaming and shouting. And immediately we had offers of record deals. And my mom was like, no, this is fleeting garbage. You're going to school. Now, I don't know if you've ever put yourself into this situation, but if you offer a child, a teenager, a choice between a dorm room and a tour bus, they're going to take the tour bus every single time, and that's exactly what I did. And I was happy with my choice at the time, but it didn't make telling my mom that all that work she'd put into my future was essentially going down the drain. But you know what? As painful as that was, as much as I can still remember that look of disappointment and fear for her son's future in my mom's eyes, this turned out to be the right decision. And, you know, as we look at what it's like to get an education in 2018, a further education, not only am I glad that I chose the path that I chose, I'm wondering if more and more kids are going to start saying to their moms, or moms are going to start saying to their kids, why bother with a college education? What's the point in that? And I love education. I love the idea of learning for learning's sake. It's a beautiful, amazing thing. But you know what? It's just too freaking expensive now. And I'll tell you how we know why next.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
So you might be wondering why we're talking so much about college and further education today. There's Trump, there's Manafort, there's Mueller, there's Stormy Daniels, there's impeachment, there's Russian collusion, there's confirm or deny that these things are happening. Well, here's the thing. You know, we touched on this a bit yesterday, but politics, these political divides, these arguments, these he said, she said conversations that the vast majority of the rest of the country are all tied up in at the moment, these are petty indulgences. And sometimes they become important enough to where you and I must discuss them because they affect your life in a very real way. But generally speaking, is a politician going to change the way your day shakes out? No. If you are voting in an election, whether it's local, federal, regional, state, whatever, whoever you're voting for, and expecting the outcome of that election to make your day different when you wake up in the morning, that's just not going to happen. And so I'm concerned about things that affect you and your life. things that really will affect how your day goes. And, well, this is why I bring up college. Like I said, my mom was chagrined, shocked, dismayed, disturbed when I broke the news to her that, hey, my band that I've been singing in for like a week and a half got a record deal super quick. And, well, I've weighed the pros and cons of tour buses versus college dorms. And I am absolutely more interested in the tour bus than the college dorm. So I'm going to be doing that. And like you and I discussed, my mom had spent my entire life pretty much preparing me for that moment where I would go to college and get a proper education and learn how to be a real musician and have all the tools that it took to succeed in this world. And I kind of threw it all back in her face by saying, not for me, Mom. And do you know, it's very interesting. This past week just gone by, when my mom came to visit and we went to meet her granddaughter. My sister recently had a baby and I flew my mom in and took her to visit her granddaughter for the first time. It was really kind of the first moment this past week just gone by where my mom and I talked about that decision to not go to college. And I can't wait to tell you exactly what she had to say about it in retrospect. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But the reason I'm talking to you about all of this is because, well, I read something, where was it? NOLA.com? I read something on NOLA.com today about the cost of college, not even the cost of college, the cost of a textbook. Now, look, I love the idea of education, the idea of learning, the idea of learning for learning's sake. Oh man, it's a beautiful, amazing thing. Opening your mind and filling it with stuff, that is a luxury that I would like to give myself at some point. If I ever got a chance to go study and it made sense and it was at a time in my life where I could, oh my gosh, that would be what I did with my day. I would go somewhere and learn. Oh, fantastic. That'd be a tremendous indulgence and a luxury for me. And I remember when my mom was talking about college and what made college worth it, a big part of it had to do with the fact that college was a place where you could explore and open your mind and learn things and sort of try different things out, whether it was socially or professionally. You sort of had this period before real life, which was like real life with training wheels. Again, a bit of a luxury that straight up most people can't afford now. It'd be wonderful if they could. A chance to try out all these different things and intern in different places and get real world experience. It'd be fantastic. People ask me all the time, can I intern for you? Are you going to college? No. Well, we only have an internship program for college students. Sorry, I wish we could. I wish we could just give work experience to plucky young high school kids or just people that were wondering what they wanted to do with their life. And I think that's, a tremendous benefit to college. It gives you an opportunity to try all these different things out. All these wonderful things that you get by going to college, whether it be an education, the joy of learning, the joy of trying different things out. All these things are fantastic, but straight up, people can't afford them anymore. And if they can't afford them, does it work out to make that much sense? Now, things thankfully are changing. In the last 3 to 5 years, I would say, less and less do I see people requiring a college degree. People want to know that you can get the job done. It used to be if you left school, I have a really close friend who left school a couple credits shy of graduating, went back home to help out their parents because their parents needed some help. And because they left college a couple credits shy of graduating, they were shut down. They were really shut down when it came to entering the workplace, to the point where if you don't have a college degree, we're not going to talk to you. Thankfully, that's changing. Because college just doesn't make as much sense as it used to. I wish it did. Like I said, it's a wonderful thing having the learning experience and trying different parts of your life out and trying to figure out where you want to go and what you want to do with your life. That real life with training wheels thing that college affords people is, well, it's sort of going away. And that's a real shame. This, by the way, this is a state school. So this is the less expensive end of the spectrum, but this is what prompted the whole decision. This is what prompted the whole decision to talk about this on the show today. This past weekend just gone by, students saw a $999 price tag for an online version of an accounting class textbook. Yeah, $999 for an online version of a class textbook. Online, meaning didn't take ink and paper and some form of expense to produce this thing. It's a textbook. Now, I know just because somebody puts something online doesn't mean it should be free. Talk to musicians about that one. But a $999 price tag for a textbook that you can't even hold in your hand? Well, this is insane, clearly. And they shared their shock on social media. Soon, their Facebook posts, you might have seen them, their Facebook posts had gone viral, and with good reason. The university responded. The university responded with a message saying that the class, Accounting 202, ironically, an accounting class, well, let's see, this is $999. My Accounting 101 class would tell me, I can't afford this. But the class, Accounting 202, this is what the university said, requires students to have hard copies of the book's pages for class. And the university said that the online price, $999, was set with the intention of encouraging students to purchase hard copies of the book at the university bookstore. The book and access codes for online supplementary materials can be purchased at the university bookstore for $313. The university basically said it colluded with the publisher to set the high online price to encourage students to purchase from the bookstore. Oh, good. You feel like we need to lug around ink and paper? So you hike up the price of an online textbook to get people to buy from the bookstore? Look, this is a dinosaur of a business, and that is wildly unscrupulous. Anybody that has an e-reader knows that it is unnecessary to carry around vast tomes that are going to probably give you back problems moving forward. You carry around enough of these textbooks for long enough and you're going to start to walk funny. But yeah, the university provost, a guy called Jamie Herbert, said in a statement, "Let me stress this is a misunderstanding. The university wants students enrolled in the course to spend only $313, and I'm grateful for the chance to encourage them to do so by vastly overpricing the online version of the textbook." And by the way, she said only $313. Is that considered cheap for a textbook in this day and age? If so, that's outrageous. Students are going to be spending more than $1,000 a year on books. Now, look, like I said, I have a hard time finding fault with the idea of learning and education. And you know what? Education has become so politicized recently. I'm not having my kid go to that college where their mind is going to be filled with that America-hating nonsense. I was like, when did learning stuff become politicized? But that's not the point of this whole exercise. It's become so wildly expensive to get a further education at a state college that it becomes prohibitive. Kids know that they're going to be paying back student loans, because they spend $1,000, $999 on an online textbook forever and ever. And education has become prohibitively expensive, and that's wrong, especially when it's an education from a state school. And fortunately, and this is only a change that I've seen in the last couple of years, fortunately, the insistence that you must have a college degree before an employer is willing to talk to you is starting to go away. Because people are just looking for a set of skills. The digital age has really sort of furthered this notion. There are multiple sort of trade schools, I guess you would call them now, that teach you how to do things like code apps. The head of Reddit said a little while ago that he couldn't hire people fast enough to write code. And so there's a demand for this. Does he care that you're a couple of physical education credits shy of your college degree? No. He literally can't hire people fast enough to write code. So as long as you can write code, you're in. And there's trade schools now that'll do things like teach you how to write code, and you don't spend 4 years of your life doing it. You spend a year and a half, or I think in some cases 9 months. And then they will not ask you to pay the cost of your education until they place you in a position where you're making $80,000 a year or more. That was a deal a couple of these trade schools, I think there was one in New York, one in San Francisco, had. You could get financial aid, I believe. You could get your education, and you didn't have to pay for it until they placed you in a job where you were making $80,000 a year plus. And at that point, you started paying them back a percentage of your salary. And would it be a shame to go to a digital trade school and not experience the joy of trying out different things in life? Yeah, it would. That was one of the things that I noticed when I moved to England. At the age of 16, you decide whether you're going to a trade school or whether you're going to college and then on to university. College and university are two different things in England. But that seemed unfair. That seemed like you were streamlining and making massive life decisions that you weren't prepared to make when you were 16 years old. You didn't know who the hell you're going to be when you're 25, when you're 16, or 30 when you're 16. But people are being asked to make these massive life decisions at those ages. And I thought that was unfair. And I still think that's unfair. But it's becoming the norm. And, I'm very glad. I'm very, very glad that kids have options other than being raked over the coals financially by unscrupulous organizations, whether they be state colleges. And the fact that they're state colleges just... it's beyond the pale that they would do something that would make learning so difficult to... learning shouldn't be difficult. I believe that we have a right to an education. Oh, scratch that. I don't believe we have a right to an education. We should have a right to an education. We don't right now. And it's because unscrupulous organizations like textbook publishers who realize they're operating on a dinosaur of the business model that's about to go out of business, pull stuff like this, and then collude with an institution of higher education to do so. So, hopefully, people are starting to come around to the idea, and I know they are, that you don't necessarily have to have a college degree to be able to get the job they need done. And hopefully, people are starting to realize that you don't have to waste 4 years of your life and pay $1,000 a pop for textbooks to have a future.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Oh, so to those that have been asking, what was the end result with me and my mom? Well, I mean, this was a deal. Like I said, my mom was deeply upset when I decided I wasn't going to go to college. I got a scholarship to Tufts and New England Conservatory of Music, and before I was going to go, I got a record deal. I went from being a kid that diligently studied drums, jazz, and classical percussion for more or less his entire life to being a screaming singer in a punk rock band almost overnight. And like I said, the drummer in that band was a guy who had been in one of the biggest bands in England. And so we had record labels crawling all over us from the get-go. And as it turns out, we were really good. We weren't the best band. If you're one of the more inquisitive people that have dug up our records, there's part of them, there's some of our records that I'm really proud of and others that I'd rather forget. But one thing you can never take away from us is we were the hottest live band in the land. I mean, I was 16, 17, 18 years old when this thing really got going, so I did not care about anything. I had a feel no pain attitude toward putting on a show. And that meant hanging upside down from lighting rigs. It meant bleeding pretty much after every single show. After listening to Henry Rollins Get in the Van, I sort of figured if there wasn't blood or some sort of contusion at the end of a performance, I'd let the audience down. So we were freaking insanely good live. That's something that I'll never front about. But like I said, not really something that my mom understood. And that deep-seated look of disappointment, which I know now, in retrospect, came from fear for my future. What's going to become of this kid who just, before you see, a lot of parents, I think, get disappointed when their kids drop out of college. I got a scholarship to a double degree program between two incredibly kind of difficult to get into institutions of higher learning, and I dropped out before I even got in. And she was concerned and she was worried and she was all these things. And you know what? For years, I thought my mother harbored resentment about this. And this past week just gone by, I flew my mom into town and I took her to visit my sister and her husband, who just had a beautiful baby, my niece Ellie. And this was it was a great moment. It was a chance to see my mom meet her granddaughter for the first time, and it was fantastic. But it was also a chance to, talk. And I think when there's new life that comes into the world, it's only natural that you talk maybe a little bit about the past. And my mom told me that she was like, you just kind of skipped college. I was like, well, yeah, I didn't go to college. I know that was difficult. She's like, no, you skipped it. Some people skip the 5th or 6th grade. Some people skip a year in school. Some people take advanced placement courses so that they can skip that first year of college or skip some of the classes. You just kind of skipped it all together and wound up doing what you were going to do anyway. I was like, really? She was like, well, you wanted to be a musician. You did that with a great deal of success for many years. You got a record deal. You toured the world. She didn't bring it up, but it was funny. I remember when we got our first record deal. One of the things that I think my mom had difficulty with and difficulty believing it was there was a stupid bidding war and we got way too much money. We really did. But my mom was like, wow, you just made more money in your first check than I made my entire career. And it was a lot of money. It was like $1 million. That was at the very tail end of when record labels were still doing that. But she was like, you were a successful musician. You were a professional musician. It paid all your bills for many years. And well, the other thing that you wanted to do was you wanted to get a journalism degree. You've written for all these magazines, which I have done in the past, and now you're sort of a radio journalist. All the things that you wanted to do, you wound up doing. And you skip college, like a lot of people skip the, 5th or 6th grade. And I was like, I guess I sort of did. And it's weird. Like I said, I can still picture in my mom's face the disappointment and fear and all these different emotions. And I'll relive that every single time I picture it for the rest of my life. And that'll never be pleasant. But it was nice. It was nice years later to have this conversation with my mom where it turned out, might have taken a few years, but she was okay with the decisions I made. And as it turns out, I made the right ones. Like I said, I would love to go back to college. Well, go back. I never went. Although it's funny, 4 years after I would have started college, when I was still in a band, I got, or my mom got an invitation to my graduation from Tufts University. I guess I hadn't corrected whatever it was in the system, and it was like, okay, this kid's starting now. He's got to be graduating then. Therefore, we send out this invitation to a graduation. My mom was like, got an invitation in the mail or I got an invitation in the mail to your graduation. How funny is that? I do remember at the time thinking maybe I could just show up and collect a diploma. I wonder how that would go. Anyways, that all worked out. And the reason I bring this up is because, well, like we were talking about, politics, bickering about who's president, who isn't president, whether or not they're going to get impeached. All these things are interesting, but they're really just a distraction. This show is about you and this show is about you and about you making your way in this world in the best way possible. And you might have a kid that's college age. You might be a kid that's thinking of going to college. And if you do have the luxury of an education, or if you manage to find an affordable situation, that's fantastic. That's amazing. And I wish you the very best in everything that you do. But know this, if you feel like you're disadvantaged, if you can't go to college, if you can't afford an education, if you don't have the luxury of the time to have an education because other things are pressing you in life, I'm here to tell you that no matter what your circumstance, no matter what it is you want to do, if you want to do it badly enough, you can and you will find a way to get that done. Trust me on this.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The Dumbing Up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
You know, I hold out hope for the future. I really do. Part of the reason is things like, well, less and less employers are requiring college degrees. And you know what I think that really comes from? I think that comes from college has gotten so ludicrously expensive over the last several years that there's now people in hiring positions, people that have the power to decide who gets the job and who doesn't. And they're looking at whether or not somebody has a college degree and goes, I come from a day and age where a college education is not necessarily the most fiscally responsible thing to go after in your life. Therefore, I'm going to give this other kid that didn't have a college education a shot because they might be just the person I need to perform the task I need performed in this organization. That gives me hope for the future. And right as I get that particular bit of hope for the future, it's dashed on the rocks when I find out that, do you see this? Do you see what went down? It was a high school senior in California this past Monday, just gone by, who grabbed another student's hat and slapped the teacher in the face. And in no way, shape, or form do they seem repentant or like they did the wrong thing. And it's just... full story in just a little bit. Right now, though, let's you and I take a look at the events of today in our segment, My Witness News. Let's take a look at what's going on. So did you see the HBO? HBO has gotten rid of all of its adult programming, like Real Sex and Taxi Cab Confessions and things of that nature. Now, the nostalgic part of me feels a little bit bummed out about this. Only because if you're like me, you grew up watching those shows and watching them very closely because, man, that was all you had. Real Sex, what was it about that show? And they're not even going to show it in reruns. I don't think that show had been in production. I don't think they were making it anymore for a very long time. But they used to show the reruns, which were kind of fun because they kind of came out in the 90s. And like, this is cyber sex. Look, there's people talking dirty to each other on the internet. Did you know this was possible? Oh, man. What a brave new world we've encountered. All the computers were towers that were 5 feet tall with screens that were the size of concrete housing blocks. Anyways, that was all we had when we were kids growing up. And besides numerous stories on what cyber sex could be, they also seem to do documentaries on swingers and all the swingers seem to be of the incredibly hairy and unshorn variety. They all seem to be these aging hippies that would go off into the woods and undulate before engaging in some sort of gross patchouli oil soaked massaging of each other. I don't know, but it was all we had. And because it played such a formative role in our education about how the world worked, if you're of a certain age, if you grew up in the 90s, well, from a nostalgic perspective, I think it's kind of sad that these shows are going away. Grown-ups of a certain age remember getting all their late-night thrills from HBO's surprisingly graphic docuseries Real Sex. And like I said, future generations going to be denied that pleasure. HBO is getting rid of all of its adult-themed programming. All of it, like Cat House or Taxi Cab Confessions and Real Sex. Not to mention those oh-so-informative sex shows narrated by the totally nude porn star Katie Morgan. That was a good time. They're disappearing from all the HBO channels and streaming services along with the erotic-themed movies only because HBO says there's not as much demand for that kind of content anymore because it's easily available elsewhere. Literally anywhere, I suppose. Yeah, what they neglected to mention is that their original shows like Game of Thrones and The Deuce, they're providing more than enough strong sexual content these days. Yeah. It's just, when you hold Taxi Cab Confessions up next to Game of Thrones, it's nowhere near raunchy enough. There you go. Speaking of getting busy, did you see that Mel B from the Spice Girls, Scary Spice? Mel B from the Spice Girls entered rehab for sex addiction. Well, I guess now we know what she wants, what she really, really wants. She wants the D. The CMA nominations are out. Yep, the Country Music Award nominations are out. I think leading the song nominations was that nostalgic ode to dirt roads, blue jeans, and pickup trucks. That didn't help narrow it down, did it? Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson would have turned 60 today. Today would have been Michael Jackson, the King of Pop's 60th birthday. So, chill out if your Burger King order takes longer than usual. Tito is in mourning. Mel B, that would be Eddie Murphy's ex and baby mama. Or Eddie Murphy, that would be Mel B's ex and baby daddy, rather. Eddie Murphy is about to become a father for, get this, the 10th time. Yeah, Eddie Murphy has gone forth and prospered and sowed his oats, spread his seed. I don't know. He's got a lot of kids. He's going to be a father for the 10th time. Or, you know, as it's known in the NBA, a good start. Hey, so if you are single and you're looking to hit the town and mingle and make a love connection, possibly get a little bit of that sweet loving this weekend, I've got some bad news for you. If you do hit the town and engage in a risky hookup, there's now much more of a chance that you're going to get an itchy burning sensation in an intimate area if you hook up this weekend. Why? Well, as it turns out, there's been a 67% increase in gonorrhea in the U.S. Yeah, according to doctors, there's been a 67% increase in gonorrhea in the U.S. Maybe we should start calling it here to stay area. See what I did there? Yeah, 67% increase in gonorrhea in the U.S. And you know what? That's nothing to clap about. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Did you hear which restaurant is going to help you eat more delicious tacos and burritos without having to leave the couch? I like all of these things. This is very exciting news. This is very exciting news if you're like me and you love Mexican food but dislike physical effort and movement. Chipotle. Yeah, did you see this? Chipotle has started a delivery service. I'm super stoked about this, only because as much as I love eating as many tacos as I can, I've found that you want to be as close as possible to your own bathroom when you do that. So it's a win-win situation. Delicious Chipotle delivered. You know, I wonder, did you use like, I don't know, DoorDash or Postmates or any of those food delivery services now? I wonder how that's affected Jimmy John's. Do you have Jimmy John's where you are? I love Jimmy John's. Jimmy John's, those are some delicious sandwiches. But the real win with Jimmy John's used to be that they delivered. You know, the freaky fast delivery, that was their thing. And now, even if you don't deliver, you deliver because you can get somebody to Postmates whatever you want to your front door without having to leave the couch, which is great. But I wonder if it's taken a chunk out of Jimmy John's business. If your calling card says, we deliver, and pretty much everybody delivers now, I wonder where that leaves you. And it makes me sort of surprised that among Postmates and among Grubhub and DoorDash and all these different online services that you can use to bring food and, as it turns out, whatever the hell else you want in this world to your front door, I wonder why Chipotle are starting a delivery service now. I don't know. I do know this, though. Did you hear about the beach that has been warning people about the dangers of a sexually frustrated dolphin? Yeah, you've been to the beach many times in your life, I'm sure, and you've probably gotten some safety warnings when you've been to the beach. You might have been warned about jellyfish. You might have been warned about sharks or riptides or currents or things of that nature. But have you ever been warned about a sexually frustrated dolphin? As it turns out, the beach in France, they didn't just have to warn people, they actually had to close down. Yeah, a beach in France had to be closed recently because a sexually frustrated dolphin had been rubbing against people inappropriately. Yes. A sexually frustrated dolphin had been rubbing against French beachgoers inappropriately, so they had to shut the whole thing down. Some people say that the dolphin wasn't doing anything intentionally. The dolphin was just being friendly and inquisitive, as dolphins often are, and anything that seemed sexually inappropriate on behalf of the dolphin was done completely by accident. But other people that experienced it for themselves, say that the dolphin was clearly doing it on purpose. You're welcome. Reach for comment. I believe the dolphin said, "Flipper? Hardly knew her." That was cheap. I'm sorry. Did you hear about this guy in California this past week just gone by? Did you hear about this guy who stole enough fruit for it to be considered grand theft? Yeah, felony grand theft of fruit. How much fruit did he steal, and what fruit was he stealing? Well, like I said, it was this guy in California, and he was arrested after police found over 800 pounds of stolen lemons in his car. Yeah. 800 pounds of stolen lemons in his car. More lemons in that car than a standard Fiat dealership. The man said his plan to steal the lemons was going fine at first, but then police caught him and things turned sour. President Trump ordered the U.S. flag at the White House to go back to half-staff in honor of John McCain. Apparently, Trump caved to a wave of criticism for having it raised to full staff too early. Yes. President Trump ordered the U.S. flag at the White House to go back to half-staff after having caved to a wave of criticism, having raised it to full staff. And hopefully, if we're lucky, that will be the last time anyone will ever hear the words Donald Trump and full staff in the same sentence. Russia unveiled a bulletproof soldier suit that can be used as an army robot. Yeah, it's a bulletproof soldier suit. It can be used as an army robot. Well, you know what? Sounds scary, but when you think about it, it's times like these, I'm very glad they're running America. China is training pilots to strike targets in the U.S. That's unnerving as well. I really don't have anything to add. Oh, like the most populated country in the world is practicing striking targets in the U.S. How's that trade war working out for us? We'll watch this space and figure things out. ISIS is looking for their fourth leader in a year. Yeah, ISIS are down a leader, looking for their fourth leader in a year. Qualifications, I think, include a college degree, 10 years of military experience, and an eagerness to be killed by American snipers. Oh, did you hear which star has been ordered to fork over $100,000 in child support to her kid's deadbeat dad? Britney Spears. Yeah, Britney Spears was ordered to pay Kevin Federline, or as we like to used to call him, superstar MC K-Fed, $100,000 in child support. Which is probably why he looked so pleased with himself when he was refilling your ice water at TGI Fridays. All right, let's get to the story about the kid grabbing the hat and slapping the teacher. There's a high school senior in Northern California who was arrested this past Monday, just gone by, for a meltdown over a Make America Great Again hat. She's a 17-year-old named Joanne Butler, and she goes to Union Mine High School in El Dorado, California. And on Monday, she yelled at another student and grabbed his MAGA hat because she said, quote, "That's a racist and hateful symbol." And then, when her English teacher tried to escort her out of the classroom, she slapped him. Yeah. What happened to her? Well, she got a 1-week suspension and she's facing 2 counts of battery. Her father, a guy called Chris Butler, said, "I don't agree with grabbing someone's hat and verbally talking to them that way, but as far as the issue being brought up, maybe this is something that needs to be brought up." Look, obviously it's difficult to take politics out of this story, but perhaps this is less about politics and more about people being spoiled and whiny and rude and disrespectful and entitled and ultimately soft. If parents aren't more mindful, American kids are going to get their tender butts repeatedly spanked by the more disciplined nations and cultures of the world.